The terrorists have until 12 on Saturday to return all the hostages, or
else
hell breaks loose. What does that mean?
Well, we don't know, but hopefully today we can discuss the options of all the craziness that is really happening. And we say this often, but I think the last couple of weeks have been an example of that. In this region, we always think it can't get more extreme, it can't move any faster.
Then we're surprised again.
We're surprised again. Just to frame everything that's been happening. In the last week or so, President Trump, together with Netanyahu, floated the idea of removing all of the population of the people of Gaza. At the same time, he's made huge threats against everyone else in the region. And since then, in the last week, Hamas have threatened to withdraw from the ceasefire agreement.
Well, he's freezing the ceasefire agreement. We have crisis. We'll see what's up with
We're in a crisis mode. We'll see what actually happens.
Yeah.
And the Houthis, our good friends from Yemen, have come out of well, I don't want to say anything racist. They've come out again and said we're going to attack again. We're still in the game.
And they also kidnapped some United Nations workers.
Yeah.
I mean,
and at the same time, a country that was already distressed and already on the brink of financial and humanitarian crisis now has no humanitarian aid coming in because international aid workers refuse to come for obvious reasons.
Definitely.
So we thought it can't get any worse and can't get more extreme.
There is no obvious reason when it's coming to the UN.
And at the same time, I've gone back to reserves.
Feeling a lot safer now that you're back in uniform.
Your feelings are misplaced, Yair.
Yes, so our time today on the podcast is limited because Mati needs to get back to his unit in Judea and Samaria. And talking about Judea and Samaria, just to frame the conversation, Hamas leadership had meetings with the Iranian Ayatollahs in Iran, and they're re-sponsoring and sending in more money, more supplies into Judea and Samaria, into the Gaza Strip, on various ways that they can, and to try to boost up Hamas to carry out more attacks, more operations against Israel now.
Yeah, well, and again, so now I'm back in uniform, so I can say these things from the inside.
Yeah.
Hamas, Judea and Samaria, Hamas is sort of the last stronghold that the Iranians have.
But before that...
What?
Before we dive in about all of that...
Okay, guys. Please, pause the video. Like, share, and subscribe to this video. And especially if you're on YouTube, press that tiny little bell on the side to make sure that you never miss the next video. We release content every day of the week. And if you want to stay up to beat or up to speed with everything that's happening here in the Middle East and Israel specifically, please make sure to do that. It helps us a whole lot and it helps the message get out to more people.
Yeah, and click this like because apparently now that's also another way that helps more people get this video.
And to everyone who has already liked, shared, and subscribed, thank you. You've done a great job. Keep up the good work because we have a huge percentage of people that have done that already.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's start with Hamas and the ceasefire agreement that is now on the brink of collapse. So let's talk about the facts that we have. Okay, Hamas announced that they're freezing the ceasefire agreement because of so-called Israeli violations that they didn't mention what they were.
I was going to say, did they state any violations?
No, they said
none whatsoever.
Multiple violations. And they're claiming, first of all, that Israel needs to stop violating the ceasefire agreement. Okay, they didn't say what we did. Second of all, they stated that Israel needs to compensate Hamas for the previous violations, so that they have an incentive to keep releasing the hostages. And on the Israeli side, the IDF is already preparing for resumption of hostilities, and all the many reservists have been called back into the Gaza Strip, into areas that we just recently withdrew our forces from. So this is the situation on the ground. Everything is like very, very volatile. And
I'm literally looking, as we're speaking, I'm looking up at refreshing the headlines in Israel because on an hourly basis,
something new
Hamas
happens.
Changes their opinion on the ceasefire.
We value the ceasefire.
Literally, we go to bed one day and they say we're out. You wake up the next morning and they say we remain committed to the ceasefire agreement. But to capitalize on what you just said, Israel hasn't violated the ceasefire agreement. We've
put you the details.
Thank you, Tomer. We've kept them, we've upheld them to the letter.
Yeah.
Hamas from
as always,
Hamas from day one, and this is important to state, have always violated the ceasefire agreement. And they always play this game of, we're not doing this intentionally, but we just can't give you exactly what we said we could.
Yeah, and also just to remember, we had a ceasefire with Hamas before October 7, and then Hamas violated that ceasefire by carrying out the October 7 massacre against Israel.
Yeah.
Just,
So, and to
to
give
frame
numbers,
this
thank you for
conversation.
Tomo putting this in. So one of sort of the pivot points that they're using is talking about aid that was entered into the Gaza Strip, and they're claiming that Israel didn't uphold their side of the deal. First of all, I've seen this and you've seen this firsthand. We know that Hamas are the reason, the only reason, by the way, that there isn't a abundance of food and goods throughout the Gaza Strip, because they steal everything. And by
How many trucks are entering every day?
Yeah, they steal. It's been hundreds to over 1,500 days. It's over 1,000 on most days of the week of trucks that go into the Gaza Strip. Much of the equipment is looted by Hamas immediately when it enters the Gaza Strip, or right after that, and then they use that to what is the term in English? To gauge,
To inflate
gauge
prices.
Yeah, but there's
They take stuff that they get for free from the medical aid, from the aid, and then
price gouging. How do you pronounce
Yeah,
that?
they basically sell the foods and the goods that is supposed to be given for free to the population at very exaggerated prices, and they use that in order to recruit new terrorists into their ranks. And how do they do that? Basically,
price gouging is what I was looking for.
How do they do that, Mati? Basically, they just there's hunger in the Gaza Strip. So if you're like a 16-year-old that your father is no longer alive, then Hamas is telling you, okay, you want to help feed your family? There's no work. Come, be a terrorist with us. I'll feed you and I'll give you some food for your family.
And if you happen to die because you're an untrained combatant, then we'll give some money to your family.
Yeah.
And you'll die a shaheed.
You think it's not because of what Trump said in the beginning of the week?
Which part of it?
The part that Hamas is no longer a player in the game, and
look, I'd say
the Gazan people
conversely. So if we look at the negotiation side of it, and we'll go back to the facts in a second, Trump sort of reshuffled all the cards.
Yeah.
And he said, what you thought was a negotiation isn't actually
not on the table even.
In fact, you thought you were sitting at the table. You're not even in the room. We're going to decide over your head. We're going to decide for you. You have no stake in this conversation. Now let's negotiate.
Yeah.
And I think it's understandable to expect Iran, Hamas, Houthis, Hezbollah
retaliating to this statement.
Exactly, to try to reposition and say, no, we're not going all the way to we don't exist at the end of the negotiation. We'd like a little better than that, so let's push back to this direction. And that's what they've been trying to do.
Yeah, that they have on us.
And they have the hostages, yes, and they're using the hostage card, and then Trump is pushing back by stating, I don't want to receive 3 hostages a week. Yeah. I want all the hostages by Saturday at noon, or else. Okay, so this is the threat. We'll see what Netanyahu and Trump will do to back this threat from not becoming a bluff.
I think Hamas is going to release hostages, but they've always been consistent. They play the game. They say, "Well, I was supposed to give it back to you. Here's the phone," and then they're always trying to
in the last minute
change something on you, so you can't really say they didn't do it. Oh, we're so sorry. The truck is 1 hour late. Oh, we're so sorry.
We had a flat tire on the way to release the hostages.
Yeah, we're confused. Instead of a hostage, it's a bag of rice. It's like always. It's always one small thing.
This is not a living hostage. It's a body. Stuff like that. This is
so they're always playing these games of trying to change things on us. But to go just back to the humanitarian aid and the question of ceasefire violations, Hamas is playing this game, saying, "Well, we're out. We're out because Israel's violated the ceasefire." Israel has the numbers. We're quite organized when it comes to these things. We've met the people that are behind this. We've had, since the ceasefire started, 14,000 trucks have entered the Gaza Strip. 300,000 tents for the displaced people.
300,000
300,000. Yes. That is more than a tent per family, or it's a tent per family.
Wow.
And these are big tents. They're not small. They're not small tents. 50 trucks a day of gas and fuel. And we've brought in a huge amount of trailers. And by the way, Hamas are saying Israel didn't bring in. The trailers meaning temporary housing.
Yeah.
The Egyptians are responsible for it, not
Israel. So it's not like it's not on us.
And then they're saying, well, you left the Rafah crossing closed. It is open. In fact, we're letting Hamas terrorists exit without the expectation of coming back. So we've done what we were supposed to do. Hamas, I think Tomel's right. They're trying to position themselves towards the negotiation.
Yeah. No, it's. Well, that's what they do. The only thing that they have is time, and that's the most valuable asset that they have, and they're trying to buy more time, and to cause Israel destruction from within by pressuring the families of the hostages, to pressure Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli government,
Yes,
and to pressure the international community with all these talks about humanitarian aid not coming in. And the more the people of Gaza suffer, that works for their benefit.
to their benefit, yeah.
Yeah. And then on the other side, Trump is pushing against Egypt and Jordan to accept and to basically give land to the Palestinian people so they can rebuild there. And he's telling them, you got lots of land, put the Palestinians there, we'll rebuild them there. And if you don't, we will consider stopping supporting you financially.
Yeah. Can you take you also what happened with Jordanian king yesterday with Trump?
What happened?
When Trump was standing there and the reporters shouting to him, standing with the king, he gonna go with you and take Gazan people and follow your. And he's standing there in front of the king before even they talk, and he said, "Yes, he's a great man, and he's gonna do that." And even that it sounds like the Jordanian king said no in the end, he still said, "I'm gonna take 2,000 sick kids." But Trump said, "Don't forget, you have a lot of empty places in Jordan to build up that, and I want you involved." And we see also Egypt in this game, and Trump is pushing them also. So that's the first time we actually see somebody acting dramatically to involve Arabic countries in the solution of what to do with the Gaza Strip.
Well, officially, and I think this is where Trump's been really interesting in this, because previously Jordan took in refugees. Previously, the Egyptians took in Hamas, Gaza refugees, even in the year preceding the October 7th attack.
Yeah.
So it's happened in the past. The difference is Trump did something public, and he's playing a very, very. I hope he's playing a fine line of pushing them too far to humiliate them, and yet sort of forcing their hand in the negotiation. And what I sense is going to happen is exactly those kind of things where, in the end, Jordan and Egypt will say something that's in the middle. We're not going to take 1.8 million, obviously, but we're going to take 10,000 because humanitarian, something. And we're going to allow pass-through to a third country for 150,000.
Yeah.
And we're going to give a scholarship program for, kids to go to schools and so and so.
Yeah.
It'll be this like middle ground where they get to save face to a certain degree. America proves that it's able to like sort of get their will, and everyone walks away.
Everybody's happy. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Or nobody's happy.
And nobody's happy, and Hamas are especially unhappy. And I think that's sort of where we're going to end up on this whole thing. But it is like, it's this, think about like the level of tension that Trump is pushing into like these relationships. Again, the Jordanian king is objectively correct to say he doesn't want the Palestinian refugees from Gaza Strip. He already has enough Palestinians.
He's not saying that he don't want. He said we all an Arab united leaders that decided not to, but you don't really have a choice, because if the U.S. doing what they said they do to Egypt, and they will take all the support, the aid support and the military support, those two countries can collapse.
Let's pause for a second on the Egypt and Jordan side of things. Israel has already survived several rounds of revolution within Egypt. So, and we're okay. We have a geographical buffer between us and like the population of Egypt.
For now, it's also like being challenged recently.
But it's called the Sinai Peninsula. Mm-hmm. So even if the government of Egypt would flip, no, I'm not talking about the Egyptian government attacking us. I'm talking about
riots from Egypt.
I understand where you're going with this. Like if we're talking about like the population of those countries overthrowing the government, the Egyptian government so far, or the Egyptian people, aren't that immediate of a threat to Israel as the Jordanians are. Jordan's in this really, really tight place. They're a very weakened economy. They've been taken in, think about like what's happened in the region. Syria, 11 years of civil war. Iraq collapsing since the second American invasion of Iraq. Yeah. Refugees that are from Kurdistan, Iraq, Syria, and countless other regions that people have never heard about that started traveling through this region. Millions of them ended up in Jordan. Jordan's population, what was the number? I think we did productions in Jordan like 9 times before COVID, in 2 years or something like that. So I've spent a lot of time on the ground in Jordan. you see the people of the country, within a matter of years from the waves of refugees that they took in, it completely destabilized the economy, brought down the wages, it terribly weakened the middle class, because now you had millions of refugees that were fighting for every job.
Yeah, at whatever cost. Yeah.
Literally at the cost of, like, they were willing to work to barter.
Yeah.
They were willing to work for food. That's how bad things were for a while. Again, this is not across every
area
profession,
in Jordan, yeah,
but in certain areas where you have, like, hundreds of thousands of refugees in a camp, they're fighting for every possible job opening. So it weakened their economy, it brought down the wages. Their government was teetering on the brink of bankruptcy.
So it makes sense that the king of Jordan and the Jordanians do not want to accept millions of Palestinians.
And let's also remember, the king of Jordan is a secular monarchy. He prides himself, he positions himself as, like, we're religious, Muslim, devoted. Listen, Google what are his pastimes, and you'll find out that it's not very Muslim behavior.
Yeah.
And his people know that, and they're very critical about it. And they are a ethnic, well, it's not really ethnic, they're a tribal minority within the people of Jordan. The Hashemite family is a minority that is more Bedouin in its ethnicity or family background than the majority of the population. The number is unknown because no one wants to talk about this. Let's say it's around 80% of the population or more is Palestinian. Many of them are anti-king. Many of them are anti-Israel, to the point where it causes internal violence in the kingdom.
Well, that's why a lot of weapon smuggling shipments are going through Jordan into Judea and Samaria, into Israel, into the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, and then, but what happens? So here's where it gets tricky. Unlike the Egyptians, where you can say, well, do what you want, this is what we want in negotiation. The U.S. can pressure them a lot more. They really have more levers on them. Israel can't afford for Jordan to collapse as a country.
Yeah, definitely. That would be a huge front against us.
If Jordan collapses as a country, that means we're fighting on our border, on our eastern border.
And it's the longest border that we have.
Yes, we're fighting against the Iranians.
Yeah.
And against every proxy army that they're able to bring into this area.
Against millions of Palestinians there.
Yes.
That's the situation.
We do not want to do that. I don't want to say we can't afford to do that, but we'd like not to afford to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
If possible.
No,
so it's like, so again, you can push and pull on the Jordanian king to a certain degree. At the end, there's a limit to the shift of interest. The U.S. and Israel want the Jordanian Hashemite kingdom to continue to exist under the leadership of the king. That is our interest.
Yeah.
And everything that allows that to happen is sort of fair play. By the way, also our relationship with the Jordanians has seen its ups and downs in recent years. We have two generations of kings there that are married to a wife that is publicly anti-Israeli. And by publicly, I mean they're in anti-Israeli protests within, the kingdom, where they call, anyway, so there's all these tensions. The Egyptians, I think, is different. Maybe you can touch on that, because I know you've done a lot of coverage on how things are changing with Egypt.
Yeah, listen, Egypt is struggling for a long time, and the major issue that they have is, of course, the financial situation, and Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is trying to reboost the economy by first of all, building and expanding the Suez Canal, now building a new Cairo capital, and all these, huge construction projects that will create more jobs and boost the Egyptian economy.
Yeah.
And of course, he's also a military man, so he's also investing a lot in the military. And what's very, I don't know if it's troubling or interesting for Israel at this moment, is that the Egyptian military is investing a lot of training, of new weaponry, of tanks, infantry, and other units in the Sinai Peninsula, which was supposed to be demilitarized. This was supposed to be the buffer zone. We have an agreement with them not to have major maneuvers and training in this area. So no Israeli troops are supposed to be there, and no massive Egyptian military are supposed to be there.
There's a restriction on size, yeah.
Yeah, and there is. We gave them, the ability to increase the number of forces in the Sinai Peninsula because of ISIS, to battle terrorism.
Well, it was temporary.
Yes, but temporary is the new constant.
But it looks like Egypt is angry first because of, we heard, the terror economy of getting stuff into Gaza. Second, because of the Houthis that start to attack and block the
flights. Basically, the flights are affected also in Egypt, not just in Israel, because of the Houthis. So
but mostly the ships.
And the ships, the ships don't go through the Suez Canal, and that's a major pillar of the Egyptian economy. So Egypt is in a very weakened position since this war began. So they're even more dependent on the United States.
So here's where we go back to, you know, this question of like of levers and power of influence.
Yeah.
People are trying to understand why Trump is making all these statements, why the administration is playing this very public game of sort of shifting the power balance. And the perception of power is critical in this region and in every region of the world. The Egyptian economy, just to your example, they rely heavily on two pillars. One is the Suez Canal, and another one is tourism. And both of those are indirectly tied into the situation with the Houthis, the Iranians, and the Americans. Because when the State Department issues a travel warning to Egypt, their economy, I mean, it takes it years to recover. When there's a terrorist attack in the Sinai Peninsula, which has happened many times over the years, I've been myself on vacation in Sinai after, you know, several years after these things. It takes them sometimes 2 to 3 years to see tourism come back. Rightly so, by the way. I mean, they're, you know,
Makes sense,
they were dealing with huge terrorist organizations within their country. And at the same time, the Suez Canal is tied into the shipping companies' perception. So this is global companies looking at the insurance policies of like, should we travel around Africa or should we go through the Suez Canal? And when they look and say, look, it's a little more dangerous, let's go around, Egypt loses money on every ship that doesn't cross the Suez Canal. And so for them, so this projection of power and stability is crucial, both for them, but also what the US is able to project in this region. So, and that's where it gets even, so you see how many like different moving parts are. Egypt benefits when America is perceived as strong and when the global, let's call it powers of good, are perceived as strong. When the Iranians and their proxies are perceived as stronger or destabilizing, they lose. Egypt suffers.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Egypt aligned itself with the United States, more than Jordan even. But I want to move on to the next ceasefire agreement that is about to be concluded. We're talking about Hezbollah in the north. So very soon, basically next week, the IDF is supposed to withdraw from South Lebanon. And the Lebanese National Army is supposed to come in and take their positions along the border to make sure that no terrorist activity, infrastructure is built there and threatens the Israeli citizens on our side. This is according to the agreement. We'll see what will happen, but we've seen so far that the Lebanese National Army is not strong enough to combat Hezbollah.
But Hezbollah is coming back. Just before 3 days, 2 days, we just bombed a huge tunnel system, and we still see today.
So there's still infrastructure destruction to be carried out in South Lebanon.
And Lebanon also joined Hamas to the government after they were
Hezbollah
to the government.
They have a few parliament members in the government of Lebanon from Hezbollah, which is concerning because you don't want terrorists as part of your government. But in general, the government of Lebanon is very, how you say it? Theocratic, like a professional built? Technocratic government of Lebanon.
The new one,
the new government in Lebanon is based on people that are more professional than politicians. That's the official statement. We'll see, you know, how long it will last.
So if we're coming back to fight in Gaza like the last time, so Hezbollah going to join again, even that is that weak?
Well, I think that Hezbollah has to save face in front of the people of Lebanon, in front of the other, groups, militant groups in Lebanon, or they will destroy them from within. It's all a matter of survival. So if Hezbollah does not project power against Israel, somebody else will join the party and basically perceive them as weak and destroy them. So this is how it is in the Middle East. If you're not the strongest, someone else will try to destroy you.
Yes, absolutely.
So
I feel that's exactly the case. And again, like think about how long Hezbollah and by extension also these other terrorist organizations have had to embed themselves into the population there and to build the infrastructure of governance. They've had decades. So they're not going to disappear overnight, even though they've been dealt, a huge blow by Israel. They're not going anywhere tomorrow. They're always going to try to come back. They're always, the funding keeps coming in. We've read, I'm trying to think where I was reading about this. Just this last week, several different stories of how the Iranians are trying to move money back to terrorist organizations. And it was creative stories. They're trying to literally find ways to deliver cash.
They're sending suitcases filled with cash with diplomats on planes to Lebanon, and then they give it to the Hezbollah operatives. And they also, we have just received from the IDF information that Iranian officials are staying within Lebanon together with the Lebanese leadership to help them rebuild and create the infrastructure again after most of the leadership, all of the
Today,
leadership
tomorrow,
was
it's going to
destroyed.
be the funeral of
Hassan Nasrallah.
Yeah, they just showed the whole route, and it looks like many of Iranian
Officials are coming.
officials are coming.
Are they handing out beepers or?
I was
you
just
know,
about to say, it sounds like a good time for a flyby by the Israeli Air Force.
exactly.
Mati just had an interesting interview.
Firework show.
Mati had an interesting interview with an Iranian guy that said that, right, most of the beating and the stuff and the people that they see in Iran attacking the regular people is Hezbollah people in demonstration.
It was, yeah. Yeah, this is coming on a new YouTube channel that we're launching that isn't on this channel. We'll link that when it's online. I was talking to a MBB, as a Muslim background believer that came from Iran, and he was telling us the story where the people of Iran hate Hezbollah because, we keep forgetting this, that Hezbollah shipped warriors into Iran
to help the Revolutionary Guard.
Yeah, to help the IRGC suppress demonstrations by Iranian people. How crazy is that? And they're doing this all over the Middle East. They're sending in proxies because the people don't want to fight against their own people anymore. So I think it's really interesting. You look at the path of money, how desperate the Iranians are becoming. You see the same thing now in Judea and Samaria. They're trying to pump whatever weaponry and whatever money they can into the region to trigger a wave of violence.
You see the fingerprint of Iran over there? The Iranian fingerprint?
We've always seen the
For
fingerprint
sure.
that way.
Yes.
This isn't new. The Iranians have been behind Hamas for a long time.
Can you explain how
Mati, what's your
see that?
experience in Judea and Samaria?
I've been there a couple times.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I spent, well, it's funny. I've been there several times over 20 years. But I'm back in Judea and Samaria for another stint, but I was there for almost 8 months straight when the war broke out. And you see this, and again, what I'm saying is available if you visit the right websites. This isn't classified information. The fingerprint of the Iranians, and the Iranians through Hamas, once in Gaza, now through through Iranian operatives that are operating on different social media platforms and Telegram and other ways. They're feeding money, resources, and information and trying to sort of incite violence everywhere they can, specifically in Judea and Samaria.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this previously. You look at what's happening now for the Iranian, specifically the IRGC, let's call it the Iranian terrorist export mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking at what is the next thing that they can use against Israel. Judea and Samaria is that thing.
Yeah.
There really isn't, there aren't many other options on the table right now.
Well, it makes sense because there's no clear border. There's no, us and them. It's basically, here you can look at, Judea and Samaria from our window, or East Jerusalem. You have terror cells also, less than a kilometer away from where we are sitting now, of Hamas in East Jerusalem. And we're just about to enter into the Muslim holy month of Ramadan.
Yeah, it's in a
and
couple
this
weeks.
is always a clashing point and a point of lots of violence and tension ahead of this holy month, so that they are rallying their troops, their people, to defend Al-Aqsa, the mosque of Al-Aqsa on the Temple Mount. We just were there a few weeks ago doing an episode on this topic exactly. And, I expect to have a lot of riots this year during the month of Ramadan.
Well, there always are. And I think that's what people often miss.
We will go.
You will go where?
We will go to Ramadan dinner together, no?
Yeah.
Three of us?
to see what what it's supposed to be.
I'm in reserves most of Ramadan.
So you will
the
have a
first-
lot of dinners.
Yeah, first 2.5 weeks of it. So, yes, and again, I think there's something that needs to be pointed out, is that fighting terrorism is a numbers game, and people forget this. They think that it's it's a handful. Shabak, what was it, last week, 2 weeks ago, they released numbers. Did you see this? Where they said there was an increase, and it was very substantial. It was double-digit percentage increase in the attempts at acts of terrorism, but they were saying that it was, I don't want to misquote it. It was like over 1,000 terrorist attacks that were prevented in a period of several months.
Yeah, what's happening in Judea and Samaria is basically preventing the terrorist attacks after the stage of conceptual inception, but before the stage of actually taking action and moving into Israel to carry out the attack.
Yes.
So this is the point that it's most effective to stop and prevent these terrorist attacks by arresting the people or just destroying the facility.
Yeah, and it gets complicated because you need to understand that in the age of internet, in the age of
Everything is very hard,
crypto
very
money,
easy to talk, to communicate.
You don't, yeah, in the past, and this was part of the challenges here. In the past, you had to have an organization to be able to get people to carry out attacks. And nowadays, they're able to reach or create a cell of people that no one else knows about. And this is sort of the dangers. Again, we're embedded within, or we're living side by side, side by hillside, in Judea and Samaria, but also in Jerusalem with Palestinian population. All it takes is 3 or 4 people to decide that they want to carry out attack, and they will be able to find online. And I'm encouraging them not to do this.
Yeah, how to create a homemade weapon, basically.
Yeah, and we've seen this. We've seen the fingerprints of the Iranians trying to reach Israeli civilians, trying to reach IDF soldiers, trying to reach, let's call it, people with extremist ideologies in East Jerusalem, within Arabs that are Israeli citizens, within Judea and Samaria at greater numbers, trying to give them funding, training, resources, and understanding of how to do things. Me and you filmed, whenever this was, several months back, in the same region I'm positioned in now. Yeah. And there was 2 bombing attacks, 2 explosive cars, and both of them were from people that, again, this is open information. Both of those attacks were people that were not affiliated with a terrorist organization previously. Yeah. You remember this? They were people that were indoctrinated, and they received their information online. They associated themselves with the Hamas movement.
Yeah, but they were not like official members of the Hamas movement. They didn't go to meetings, to headquarters, to stuff like formally.
Exactly. And because of that, it was very hard to stop them. And these people created rudimentary car bombs using online information. And the problem is the first guy fails, the second guy fails. If they're at it long enough, and they
statistically, someone will succeed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's really the problem.
Well, and that's what we've seen not long ago with the terror attack against IDF soldiers in a field box in a position in Judea and Samaria, that basically a terrorist hid himself next to the location and then surprised the troops. Like in the morning, he spent the whole night there, and then when they came in the morning, he surprised them and carried out an attack, murdered two, three of them, something like that.
Mati is now back to the reserve, and he's probably tired most of the time.
Yeah, so what do you do in order to wake up, except for the 3 cups of coffee, 1 tea every day, Mati?
So I've been taking Vinia. Have you heard of Vinia, Yair?
Yeah, definitely. Vinia, listen, Vinia is one of our sponsors. I've been taking it, you've been taking it. It's basically a boost to the energy, to the blood flow, and we don't just say it because they're our sponsor. It really works.
I'll give you the military sales pitch.
Yeah? Okay.
When I'm like well rested and exercising on a regular basis, the effect is minor on like my energy levels. When I'm exhausted and not sleeping enough and physically tired, I feel like the effect, it's so effective. I'm sometimes surprised it's all natural. Let's put it that way. But it is all natural. Yeah. And it is scientifically backed, and it has incredible research behind it. And it really works for blood flow. And everything, when you think about this, everything in our body is blood flow. Cognitive abilities, and we both, lead people in both civilian and military life.
Oxygen.
Yeah, it's oxygen to the brain, it's recovery to the muscles, it's energy levels, it's everything. Everything. It's not going to make up for the fact that you slept 3 hours at night.
Yeah, definitely.
But still, it works incredibly, and especially on the long term. We've seen stories, and I know these things get tricky when you talk about like the medical experience and stuff like that. We've seen stories that are unbelievable with people that were older and needing those kind of, that boost to their energy and recovery of their body. We strongly stand behind it. I've been taking it for several years at this point. Yeah. Strongly stand behind it. And we want people to get some of it.
Yeah, it works. Listen, people also say that drinking a glass of wine a day is helpful for you, but a glass of wine has lots of sugar, has alcohol. So the concept, behind Vinia is you take the pill,
by the way,
and that's the good stuff.
They used to say that.
Yeah.
Now we're at the point where I think they say that the negative effects of drinking alcohol and the amount of sugar and alcohol that's in it,
they're more than the antioxidants that are good for your body, right?
For most people.
Yeah.
For most people. If you're young enough and healthy enough, it might sort of be a net zero. But if you're not, and you're not active enough, it actually might be detrimental to you. Alcohol, whatever, this is a whole different topic. But Vinia does all of that without the alcohol or the sugar. And alcohol and sugar are not good for you. There's no debate about it.
In
sadly.
general, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, definitely, guys. And if you want a 10% on your Vinya subscription, go to vinya.tbnisrael.com and get your TBN subscription by entering your email address there. And you can get a monthly subscription of Vinya into your house. So thank you. It will help us also create more content from Israel. And we believe it works. It helps us a lot on a daily basis. So try it for yourself.
Let's go back to Judea and Samaria.
Yeah.
The IDF has been, how long has it been? It's been a month?
Yeah, a month.
A month of fighting in northern Samaria, specifically in Jenin, which has been a hotbed of terrorism.
We tried twice to get in, and each time that it's becoming more and more, the IDF tell us that it's becoming more and more dangerous, and it's...
Look, the reality is, and again, what I'm saying is public information if you follow the right channels on these kind of things, including TBN Israel.
The best channel.
If you really keep track of what's happening.
And if you didn't subscribe yet, you should.
Yes, you should. Judea and Samaria is becoming more and more extreme in the level of weaponry, specifically Samaria, which is close enough to the, let's call the smuggling routes from Jordan. Now, we've seen a rise in the level of weaponry. We've seen a substantial rise in the quality and the size of the IEDs, to the point where now...
Those of you who don't understand, IEDs are the explosive devices that are placed on the side of the roads. And when
improvised explosive device.
Yeah.
ID. Yeah.
Yeah, basically bombs that are placed in a bag of garbage next to garbage cans that you don't see them, but then you drive next to them, and then with a phone call, the terrorists can activate this device next to the troops. And the situation in Judea and Samaria is that the troops are operating there all the time, and then some patterns are repeating themselves, and then the terrorists know where to put these devices. So this is the challenge always, like also for Mati now and the troops to, think differently and invent themselves on a daily basis.
It's very difficult. And
I'd
say more so, part of the challenge is there's a huge gap between your ability when you're on the offensive and when you're on the defensive.
Yeah.
When you're on the offensive, you can be unexpected, unpredictable, and creative. When you're playing defense, and specifically in Judea and Samaria, when you're embedded within civilian population, the tools at your hand are much more limited than they are elsewhere. This isn't the Gaza Strip or Lebanon where we're outside of the boundaries of the country and you can maneuver and, and come from this side or that side or from the air and stuff like that. You're fighting in mountainous terrain where the number of access roads is limited, where if you want to come from a different angle, you're taking a bulldozer and going through the mountains to reach the other side of a community. It's very, very limited in what you're able to do. And again, there are people living there all the time.
Yeah, and the day after this war, whenever that will be, they live next to the Israelis. We have a relationship. It's right here. It's not far. It's not a different country. It's not outside of our borders. It's within the borders of Israel.
So what's the solution for this, Yair?
Well, it's very complicated, but I think when stuff are too complicated for me to understand, I think it's best to, leave them with God. And, if you want to pray for something about this situation, I would pray for wisdom to your leaders, wherever they are, whatever country, if it's the United States, Europe, Africa, wherever, is pray for wisdom for your leadership to make the godly decisions in this situation, because it's very complicated. And then, we'll really appreciate you praying for our soldiers, pray for Mati, as he's going for like a month and a half of IDF reserve now, wearing uniform, running in the mud. It's very hard to fight in the rain and in winter in general, because for all sides, it's just cold, wet, you don't see much, it's very hard.
Yeah.
Okay, so pray for the soldiers of the IDF and pray for all the civilians that are affected by this conflict, and pray for the peace of Jerusalem. It's the best thing that we can do in this situation.
I think there's one more element which we love getting, especially as Jews in Israel. We love getting into these debates about our leadership.
Yeah.
They're good, they're bad, they're virtuous, they're not. We just need to pray for our leaders, for supernatural wisdom and power
and health and
and clarity of mind. It's like the effect of like the decisions they make is so dramatic right now.
Worldwide.
It's so dramatic. And we read, and do we have 2 more minutes? We do. Gallant, our previous Minister of Defense, he just had this very long, did you read it on the weekend?
Yeah.
Very long expose in the biggest newspaper in Israel. On his time, he essentially led he He was the Minister of Defense from, well, since before October 7th till about a month ago.
Yeah.
3 weeks ago, a month ago, give or take. And he was fired.
He led the army, basically.
He led it, and you hear, he's a man with an impeccable record. I think this needs to be said, that the man has fought for this country for his entire lifetime.
Special forces units, leading the army.
He's highly respected and highly
capable.
Highly accomplished general and now military leader. There's a lot of gravitas to what he says. And you look at his reports on things, and I was just so deeply impressed by the weight of history on the shoulders of our leaders, of the fact that they stood in a time. I remember this, like people often like imagine themselves, well, if I was prime minister, I would do something.
I would do different. Yeah, let's see.
Easily said. How would he do on October 7th, 8th, and 9th? And you hear the way he describes things, and I was just deeply impressed by the level of responsibility and leadership that I've seen. And he's not alone in that.
Yeah.
I've seen the same thing. There were two people that really stood out in the first month of the war. It was Herzi Halevi, the chief of staff, or he's now the outgoing chief of staff. He resigned recently. And Gallant, who was the Minister of Defense. When our country, it's hard to explain and remember how hard it was. It was a mess.
Nobody knew what to do, what's happening.
They stood up, what was it, like 5 days into the war, they stand up, they say, right? It was like days into the war. I am responsible personally. I will resign for what happened.
But not now. Let's first of all defend our country, bring security to our borders, and then.
Yeah, and I think that's the question always is, like, for people. No, all leaders are imperfect. And,
all humans.
All humans are imperfect, and by extension, all leaders are imperfect. None of them are, they're all appointed by God, but none of them are like God.
Exactly.
So let's put it that way. What we can do and what we can ask people to do is pray for the leadership. And I was taught by a very wise man many years ago, so when you don't know what to say, just say the Lord's Prayer. Have you heard that before? So instead of saying, because because you say, well, I want Netanyahu to be wiser, but I don't like him, so I don't want him to be, it's like, no, just say, God, let your will be done, as in heaven as it is on earth. Just pray the Lord's Prayer, because you sometimes don't know what to say. And in these kind of situations, think about this. People were critical of Netanyahu for sort of like fading into the background in the first weeks of the war. Think about the level of intelligence that man was receiving back then, and President Trump the same, and still to this day, where they're said, oh, you want to attack in Hezbollah? No problem. Here's our, we ran the war games about 6 months ago for this.
This is the scenario that will happen.
Please sign the plan. We're expecting, and the numbers were 300,000, Israeli casualties.
3,000 rockets every day into the heart of Israel.
For a month.
For a full month.
For a month. Something like that. For a full month. And tens of thousands of soldiers that might be, or many thousands more soldiers killed. Now make a decision.
Right, now sign, let's do it. Okay.
I look at that and I say, like, the only thing we can do in that situation and today, because the enemies still exist, is just to pray for our leaders to have supernatural wisdom in these kind of situations. And I think that should have always been. It's been from the time of the Bible till this day. That's always the decree is pray for these people to have an understanding, an energy level, a clarity level, a wisdom and foresight level that is beyond what they possess personally.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Mati.
Thank you,
We'll be praying for you.
Okay,
keep yourself safe, watch your back. And guys, thank you for joining us. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel.